The League of Women Voters of Cape Ann is pleased to bring you 25-minute interviews with the two candidates for Mayor of Gloucester. 1623 Studios is hosting us, and we also have with us Ethan Foreman, a reporter for the Gloucester Daily Times. The League is a non-profit organization which encourages the active participation of citizens in their government. We do not endorse any individual candidate for public office. The election is Tuesday, November 4th. I'm June Michaels, a Rockport resident, and the candidate with me is Greg Verga, the incumbent mayor, looking for a third term. So the first question, we start off in City Hall. The building is out of date in many ways. What do you envision as the future for the building and for the area?
Well, for the building, I foresee it staying as the center of municipal government. It's been probably one of the longest running, continuously running city halls that still serves as a city hall. I think it was 1871 the city was built. The city hall was built. We just put our new historic plaques on there just last week. So I don't see us closing it down or making it a museum, but it does need a lot of work. We had a quote about 2 years ago of a $12 to $24 million hit to the budget to do some upgrades. We definitely need some upgrades to the electrical system, to the fire alarm system, and the introduction of a fire suppression system. A later question will deal with the wastewater treatment plant, but that is sort of tying up our borrowing capacity for the foreseeable future. But it's such a great building. People come in from all over the world to look at the murals, and it is something that will remain, as long as I'm in a position to make it happen, the center of municipal government.
Thank you. Local industry provides local jobs and tax money. There's a strong call for more industrial bays in Gloucester, but our 4 industrial parks, Blackburn, Kettle Cove, Condolin Road, and Pond Road, are full. What do you see as the best way Gloucester can expand local industry?
All right. Well, there's some room for expansion at Condolin Road. One of the problems with Condolin and Kettle Cove is they're not served by the public sewer system, so that limits what can go in there. And there's a combination of city-owned land at Condolin and private land. But the EDIC has done some research on the feasibility of expanding up there, and right now there isn't much of a feasibility aspect to do it. We do have space still at Blackburn Industrial Park. There is one parcel that was purchased and cleared to make way for a cannabis grow and retail shop. The investors in there have backed out of that. Now they're looking to sell it. One thing that I find discouraging is the list sheet for it says it is a potential 40B site, meaning for residential. I don't think we should have residential at all in the industrial park, whether it's above the existing buildings or taking this one remaining space, which is 9 plus or minus acres, and putting in housing. I think we have very little reserve space for commercial, and we need to make sure that we maintain that for the industrial parks. I think that we have other areas we could expand, but I think right now, until we get those other ones filled, it's a little premature to talk about where we might do the expansion.
Thank you. Upper Banjo Pond and Fernwood Lake in West Gloucester is a watershed area and backup reservoir with a dam that is in poor repair. There is a proposed development for about 26 single-family homes on that land. What would you like to see happen to the parcel?
All right, well, it's privately owned, and I firmly believe in property rights, but I also believe that people need to have their say in it, and I believe that whatever goes in has to fit the character of the neighborhood. So this, I think it's 25 units that's proposed up there. It's been permitted through the planning board, then it had to go through a Conservation Commission review. After they did the review, they found that its proximity to the Fernwood Lake triggered the need for a watershed protection overlay district, which meant the reduction of a walking path that had been proposed around there and doing some other juggling. Even though Fernwood Lake is not a current water supply or even an emergency water supply in use by the city, it is still listed as one. So that's why all these things are triggered. So I think if this is done tastefully, And we should also mention that 4 of the units are deed restricted affordable units. So the inclusionary zoning kicks in there. So what I would like to see up there is, after they've gone through their process, they've got all their approvals, I'd like to see them build what they said they were going to build. It's a cluster development. And if you look at the renderings, what it does is it brings the parcels closer together, the houses closer together, so there's more green space around it. So instead of these big 1 or 2 acre lots spread out, they're more clustered, hence the name cluster zoning, and a lot of green space is left around it. So it can be a good thing. We need housing of all sorts here, whether it's affordable housing with a capital A or housing in general, because every new unit that comes into the city creates somewhere where people who are already here can potentially live. And the affordable units are definitely we have a need for. So it's something that I think can be done tastefully, can be done well without too much disruption to the neighborhood.
Gloucester is under a mandate to update the wastewater treatment plant, a project estimated to cost $206 million. Can you tell me where we are in has it been permitted or?
So we're in the process. So this began when I first was running for mayor in 2021. I said we have to address this because this is the proverbial can that's been kicked down the road for 4 decades. We have been under we've had a waiver from the federal government that allowed us to just use the primary treatment that we have in place. When I was coming into office, it was pretty much a musical chairs thing. The music stopped. There was no chair for me to sit in. So it's like, okay, we negotiated with let me rephrase that. There was no negotiating. We agreed with the federal government that we would indeed fulfill our obligation to upgrade to a secondary treatment plant. And here's the funny thing. So when I was on the council in 2010-ish, we always sat around saying, how are we going to pay for an $80 million sewer plant? And then I got into office and I was like, how are we going to pay for this $100 million sewer plant? And then we actually had our engineers, an engineering firm that we hired outside to put pen to paper, and lo and behold, $206 million. So the fact that people in city government over the last 40 years, for various reasons, decided to defer this has cost the city tens of millions of dollars. $206 million is not a very wonderful thing for any of us to think about. But if I had the chance, I'd like to think I wouldn't have taken it, but I could have, if I had the chance to say, we're not doing it now, some mayor down the road in a decade will be looking at a $400 million project. So it's in our best interest to get this project completed, so we're in compliance with the federal government, and then we can start to figure out how we're going to pay for this. Because the fact of the matter is, we have to do it. How we pay for it's the question. We plugged in $10 million of ARPA funds when I first took office that helped get us kick-started. It doesn't really get too far into that $206 million. It helped with the prep work. We've gotten earmarks, well, they're now called congressionally directed spending, from our federal delegation over the last 3.5 years to the tune of about $3 million. I don't think we'll be seeing much more from our federal delegation for the next couple of years at least. From our state delegation, we got about $300,000. So even if you take that 10 million, that 3 million, and that 300,000, that's really not a lot towards that 206. But we have been approved through the city council. They have allowed us to bond $206 million, and we're borrowing from the SRF, the State Revolving Fund. So the money that was President Biden had talked about for the infrastructure, the Build Back Better plan, all that stuff, that's where it was housed. Unlike ARPA funds that went directly to cities and towns, the chunk went to the state, and the state decided to divvy it up through the SRF. So we have a loan agreed to for $206 million. We're borrowing tranches of whatever we need each year, probably $50 million or so. And the SRF is a low interest loan, very low interest, and a certain percentage of the principal will be forgiven. We don't know what that percentage is, whether it's 1%, 2%,
so it'll be
5%.
Forbidden by the state because you're using the revolving fund. So
Right. So in the end, there are 2 ways to pay for it. Well, 3 ways. One is to keep begging, which I do every time I see our federal delegation or state delegation for some earmarks, congressionally directed spending to help us out. And so the other ways that are really the 2 primary ways we will pay for most of it is either to the ratepayer, those who are on the sewer system, or what we've done in the past is what's called the debt shift. Like when we had the catastrophic failure at the water treatment plant when Carolyn Kirk was mayor, instead of putting that repair bill on just the water users, it went citywide. So even people on wells chipped in. And I think the argument can be made that even if you're on a septic system, you do benefit from the clean harbor and benefit from the economic development possibilities of having a secondary wastewater treatment plant. So it remains to be seen which way we'll go. It'll be up to the city council. They'll have to take the vote on which direction we go. Well, if we choose not to go to the ratepayer, which is across the board, the council would have to vote for that. And we'll still be asking for money as we go along. So this will be many years to pay it off. We'll be asking for money every opportunity from each budget from the state and the federal government to help offset it.
But you don't know when construction will be done? And
well,
when
we're
the
required to have it
final-
done by June, originally June of 2028. I think we've gotten an extension, so we might be looking at close to the end of 2028. But we hope to be breaking ground sometime next year.
And now that you're borrowing, is the city paying back any of the principal each year, or just paying the short-term interest?
We haven't actually borrowed yet. So we've been approved by the city council to ask for the money. We've been approved by the SRF that we can borrow the money, but we haven't asked them to give us the money yet because we're still in the finalizing the design.
Thank you. Dogtown Common, donated in 1930 to the city of Gloucester by the Babson family to be kept as watershed and public park. There's some discussion ongoing about transferring Dogtown's conservation restriction to Essex County Greenbelt. What do you think would be the best thing to do with Dogtown?
It's to keep it in Gloucester's hands. One thing we are looking to do is right now Dogtown is several lots, not necessarily building lots, but it's still separated into separate deeds. Separated into separate deeds sounds kind of redundant. It is separate deeds right now. What we would like to do, the Open Space Committee, Open Space and Recreation Committee at Gloucester Volunteer Board, has been looking at this. So we're trying to consolidate into one big parcel, which make it a lot easier for us to maintain control of and know where the lot lines are. I wouldn't support, I don't see the reason to hand it over to Greenbelt or trustees or anybody else at this point. It's worked well for the last almost 100 years since it was donated.
Okay. Climate change. What would you do in the next term to protect Gloucester's coastal and coastal resources and other infrastructure from climate change? Okay.
Well, one thing that I did, and I ran on it in 2021 and delivered on it in 2022, was the creation and the hiring of a sustainability coordinator. That person, their job is to eat, breathe, and sleep all things related to sustainability, and one is things we can do to protect us. I think it's also important to recognize there are some things that are beyond the control of any small city. You know, we don't have the resources to build an extended break wall, or to build like some movable thing like they have in some of the European countries. But what we can do is the things that we are doing, which is trying to lower our carbon footprint. You know, we've weatherized buildings, we've put mini splits into our outlying fire stations. But we've also, prior to me becoming mayor, but after I became mayor, they went online, the two barrier walls, one around the wastewater treatment plant on Essex Ave and the other one around the high school. You recall in 2018, the high school became Lake GHS, and you know, all those many cars were destroyed. And the good news is that those barriers have proven to be effective. You know, we had some storms earlier last year, I believe, with a lot of flooding down on Roger Street, very noticeable. But the barriers kept the water away from our plant and away from the high school property. So we are very mindful of what our infrastructure is. You know, our buildings we're protecting. The other thing is the new floodplain zoning requires, based on wherever you are, how high you can build. You know, so that protects infrastructure going forward. But a lot of downtown, Roger Street, was ocean. You know, it was filled in probably the early 20th century. Urban renewal came along and created more havoc down there. But that waterfront was something that was owned by Mother Nature, and it's going to be tough for us to maintain it if the projections are correct about rising tide. So whether you think that it's man-made, the cause of global warming, or you think it's just a natural cycle of the earth, it doesn't matter what you think the source is, it's there. You know, you just look out your window on a stormy day and you see it's there. So we have to do what we can that's within our budget and within our power in encouraging people to protect their own properties, but also make sure that our zoning is in place, like the floodplain zoning, that ensures that new properties aren't built, new structures aren't built on properties that are too close to the water, which are just found to be, underwater at some point.
Thank you. We have time for the vision question. Can you tell me one problem that's crucial today that you see being solved in 5 years, and one little problem that's way down the list that will be very big in 5 years if we don't handle it?
Oh, geez, that's a great question. Well, I think, first of all, we already talked about it, but I think for Gloucester, that wastewater treatment plant is probably the biggest problem that was the elephant in the room for decades, and it wasn't addressed. If we drag our feet on this any longer, we are in big trouble, because last thing we want is to get tens of thousands of dollars in daily fines from the federal government. So I see that as something that is a solvable problem, because we are addressing it. As far as a small problem that let's see, you said it's a problem that is small now and may be big?
But if we do nothing for 5 years, that's what everyone will be.
I think, well, one thing we have to look at, our fire station is a big one for me. So happy birthday, fire station. It's 100 years old this year. And it was literally state of the art when it was built. There are actually magazine articles from 1925 showing how Gloucester's fire station was the poster child for a modern fire station. And when you were putting in early Model T fire trucks in there, I don't know what they were actually called back in the day, but that's one thing. But when we order new apparatus today, first thing we have to do is measure the door, the width and the height, and make sure that what we buy can be backed into that bay. And it was probably the best spot in the city in 1925, 26. It maybe not so much now. So we do have to address that, because the last thing we want to do is have something catastrophic happen at the station, meaning, a floor collapses. We're nowhere near there, folks, just want to be very clear. Just trying to give you, by way of an example. We had to be prepared, because we had to find somewhere else to build. We're not building there. It's just, we would have to take by eminent domain, which, again, folks, not even thinking about it, all the houses in the neighborhood, just to give you, I think it's like 3 acres of what they recommend now for a fire station, because they don't back in, they usually pull right through. So we have to find location B, build there, and then move the fire station. It can't be one of those things like we're renovating the fire station as is, because there's no way to expand outward. So that is one that we really need to be thinking about. Is, we've taken care of most of our elementary schools. We've got 2 left. That's something that I don't think is a dire threat that we must address in 5 years, but down the road we have to think about what becomes of Beaman and Plum Cove School. We've upgraded the police station. We've fixed the Legion. We've done all this work to our buildings around the city, but the fire station we've done the outskirts stations, upgraded there. But that one just keeps getting pushed down the list, and our chief, who's been here for about 10 years, he came in here under the impression that we'd be building a new fire station. Each year it just keeps getting pushed further and further down the list. That is a core service that the city absolutely has to be very aware of, and the quality of the building reflects the morale of the employees too. And those people, those brave men and women that go out every day fighting fires for us, deserve a safe, modern building. And my goal is that within the next 5 years, we have identified a spot and we get construction going. But back to the other thing we said about the $206 billion limits our borrowing capacity. A fire station is probably a $30 to $40 million price tag. Unlike school buildings, where there's the MSBA, Mass School Building Assistance, where there's reimbursable up to 50%, in some cases over 50%, a similar program does not exist for safety buildings. I know Senator Tarr has been pushing forward a bill like every year to create that. And when we had the Lieutenant Governor here for the ribbon cutting of the library, we actually walked her over to the fire station to make a pitch for the Senator's bill. So hopefully we can have that come to fruition, because until we get into a much better financial position now, bonding 100% for the project is not feasible. Bonding 50 or 60% might be feasible.
Thank you. Well, now it's time for your 1-minute closing statement.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm Greg Verga, running for mayor. In the short time I have been mayor, Gloucester is more energy efficient, more climate resilient, Veterans Park for free, and the headache of beach traffic has been eliminated. I can't possibly go over all that my administration has delivered for Gloucester for the last, in 60 seconds. So I would urge you to go to voteverga.com, where you'll find a very extensive list of the accomplishments that we have done over these past almost 4 years. And I would urge you also to watch the debates and the statements that are available right here on 1623 Studios. And I'm confident that once you have done that, you will see a clear distinction. You will see who really understands this job, who has been delivering for the people of Gloucester, and who has actually laid out a vision of what Gloucester can be in the coming years. So I'm asking for your vote on November 4th. So thank you so much.
On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Cape Ann, I want to thank Greg Verga for agreeing to be interviewed, and thank 1623 Studios and the Gloucester Daily Times for helping these interviews be shown to the public. Please remember to vote on November 4th. The League of Women Voters of Cape Ann is pleased to bring you 20-minute interviews with the candidates for Gloucester's mayor. 1623 Studios is hosting us, and with us is Ethan Foreman, who is a reporter with the Gloucester Daily Times. The League is a nonpartisan organization which encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government. We do not endorse any individual candidate for office. The election is Tuesday, November 4th. I'm June Michaels, a Rockport resident. The candidate with me is Paul Lundberg, a former chair of the City Council and a councilman for 6 years. I'll start with City Hall.
Thank you.
The building is out of date in many ways, although it was refurbished. What do you envision as the future for the building and for the area around it?
Well, first, thank you and the League for doing this. This is really important for our voters to be able to see the candidates speak their minds on these various issues. So thank you for doing that. Now, City Hall is a unique asset that we have. It is historic, it's beautiful, and it's functional in some ways. Now, of course, any kind of office situation needs modern accoutrements and all that sort of thing, and the City Hall does okay with that. But we want to maintain it as the seat of government for Gloucester. It is such a representative and incredibly meaningful vision of our city. The WPA murals that are inside the building are historic as well. I think it's kind of the largest collection of WPA murals anywhere in the United States. And so there are so many things, and I think people have a sense of not only government influence, but that they can be a part of something really bigger. That's what government's all about. So whatever we have to do, we will do to make it compliant with the electrical and plumbing and all that sort of thing. And I think the plans are made. How we fund the plans will be a whole different issue.
Thank you. Local industry provides local jobs and tax money. There's a strong call for more industrial bays in Gloucester, but our 4 industrial parks, Blackburn, Kettle Cove, Condolan Road, and Pond Avenue, are full. What do you see as Gloucester's best way to expand local industry?
So I see the city, and particularly the mayor, being the civic business partner for the businesses, large and small, that come to Gloucester and want to reside here. Obviously we have some issues in terms of where we're located at geographically. We're kind of at the end of the line out here. Having said that, we have been very successful at developing business parks for industrial sites that are of the medium size, small manufacturing and the like. Although Varian has obviously turned into large manufacturing, and that's because we've done a pretty good job of being the hosts for that business. Whether or not we should be expanding the business parks is a really good question, and one that the city should definitely address. There are ways to decide whether we can be more. We can certainly know how to be market friendly to businesses. Whether we can find businesses for whom locating in Gloucester fits into their business plan, that's a whole nother story. And that's really the role of the economic development person that the city would have, is to find those businesses that might be compatible with the kind of things that we offer here, the kind of workforce that we offer here. We do have some advantages there. We are on the commuter line, so there are some things that we can offer. But I think that we've got a pretty good base. But the first thing to do is find out if we have some clients for that base.
Thank you. Upper Banjo Pond and Fernwood Lake in West Gloucester is a watershed and backup reservoir with a dam that is in poor repair. There is a proposed development for some 26 single-family homes on the land. What would you like to see happen for the area?
Right. So, excuse me. In the first instance, the project, the cluster development project that you spoke of around Banjo Pond is currently before the planning board, and they have granted the cluster development part of it, but I think they have another granting to do because of the interplay with the watershed for Fernwood Lake, which is a part of the city of Gloucester's water system, although it's a dormant part. It's not currently being used, but that's not to say that it wouldn't be used. So the protections necessary for building in and around a watershed need to be in place, and I'm sure that we're getting there with that. I mean, our boards and commissions are pretty savvy and know what they're doing. The planning board in particular, I was on the planning board for 6 years, so I'm a big fan of them. They know what the right thing to do is. In terms of things like, what kind of protections they need to give in making that development for the watershed, I'm sure they'll figure that out too and do the right thing. I know that there is an issue with the dam that you mentioned. I don't know how urgent that is, but that's something that a mayor should know and would know. If I were the mayor, I'd figure that out too.
Sometimes it does rain.
It does rain, yes it does. And we also want to make sure we have enough resources for our drinking water. I think we've got plenty. We have lots of reservoirs and we have a pretty good system that supports the city's water needs. But we always want to make sure that we are right on top of that. But as far as the actual development goes, I think if it receives all the final permitting that it needs, it's because it complies with our zoning ordinance.
Thank you. Pivoting gracefully from water to sewer, Gloucester has a plan, an approved project to update the wastewater treatment plant after many years of discussion. What state is it in? Is it, you have the plan and design, is it under construction?
So as far as the actual status of the project, it is not under construction. As you mentioned, it has been an issue for many, many years. Gloucester's sewage was not compliant with the requirements of the EPA. However, we kept getting waivers to not have to build the secondary treatment, which we have now agreed with the EPA to do. So that's going to require a couple of $100 million, $200 million is what I have heard. So now the question is, how do we finance that? How does the city finance that? The thing that the city has failed to do so far, and that I would do immediately, is to tell the citizens how much it's going to cost each of us. Each of us taxpayers is going to have to pay a portion of that project. It's a requirement, so we're going to have to do it. But as the mayor, I would let people know what that cost is going to be. And then I would say, and let's go see if we can find some outside money to help us pay for that, either from the state government or the federal government. In the past, there have been programs for clean wastewater and that sort of thing. Whether there are today, don't know. But we still have to go ahead and do it, and we're still going to have to pay for it. So, but it's not yet under construction.
So the construction costs could go up then?
They could. They generally do.
And usually municipalities have to borrow for at least part of such a project. $200 million in a 20-year loan is $10 million a year in principal. A 20 or 30-year loan involves, even at municipal rates, which are
Right.
lower than home mortgage rates,
Yes.
is quite a lot of interest on top of that.
Yes, it is.
Does the city have any reserves set aside for part of it?
There are no reserves to pay for that particular project. No, that would be financed by the taxpayers. I do understand that in some instances, cities that borrow money to do certain projects can maybe qualify for some kind of interest rate benefits. They still have to pay the cost of the loan, but there may be some interest rate benefits. There may be some grants, although, given what the federal government is going through right now, who knows what kind of grants are any more available from the federal government. We just don't know at this point.
Is there a deadline at which we have to be underway and actually doing
I believe there is a deadline. I believe we have a couple of years to get this done, but I'm not entirely sure of the specific deadline in the consent agreement, but it's fairly short. I mean, we have to do it now.
Dogtown Common, donated in 1930 to the city from the Babson family to be kept as watershed and public park. There's some ongoing discussion about transferring the conservation restriction to Essex County Greenbelt and losing then some local control. What do you think would be best for the future of Dogtown?
Well, again, of the many unique assets, including City Hall, including Gloucester Harbor, we have Dogtown, and there are very few cities and towns in Massachusetts that have such a unique asset as that. And so we own it, and we need to take the best possible care of it. I know that over the years there have been those thoughts people would have, saying that in terms of maintaining and managing open space, especially open space like Dogtown, which is a considerable amount of which is just undeveloped and will always remain undeveloped, an undeveloped forest kind of place. That there are places like Greenbelt, organizations like Greenbelt that have an expertise in managing them that perhaps the city of Gloucester doesn't have. And that's generally been the discussion. As far as losing control, I'm sure that we would never lose control. We might partner with someone that could do some of that better than we could do. There's several aspects of Dogtown besides the wilderness part. There's a series of trails that are pretty neat all through Dogtown and over to Rockport. And then, of course, there's the historic part where there used to be a residential compound back in the days when all that's left are the cellars. And those cellars are marked with numbers, and there's a historic story with each one of them that's quite fascinating. So there's a whole bunch to manage up there. And I would want to make sure that we had the absolute best way to manage it. But losing control over it, it's an asset that we own, and we will always maintain the control.
Thank you. Another thing the federal government is not paying for is climate change mitigation. How would you plan to protect coastal resources and other infrastructure? What can we do over the next few years in the absence of grants and other money?
Well, like every other project that's too big to do, which is respond to climate resilience, we can do something about it, and we can have a plan. The things that scare people the most are the catastrophic things, like what happens when the tide is so high that it covers Route 128 coming into the Apide Andrew Bridge. What are you going to do about that? Well, you're going to raise up the road. Well, that's millions and billions of dollars to do that. My recommendation is we always start with what we can do. Right now, for instance, if the street at Riverdale Mills floods because of a high tide, the police and the fire have an action plan as to which way they should go if they have to respond to an emergency in North Gloucester. And they know which route they have to take if the main route is blocked. What we don't have is an emergency plan going the other way. If you are a resident up there and you need to get to Addison Gilbert Hospital and the street is closed, which way do you go? And so that's one of the things we could do right away. We could start that kind of emergency planning that we can actually do something about that's not going to cost $1 million. And that will benefit the people. As we go into those kind of projects, we will then get to the bigger ones, the ones where we have to do some mitigation, some construction mitigation. There are challenges along Rogers Street, just next to downtown Gloucester, that floods periodically, that we might have to do something about sooner than we would have to do something about the roads leading into Gloucester. But we should also have a plan for all of that, and we should have the idea of what it's going to cost and where we might be able to get those funds, and some kind of a schedule, even if the schedule is we need to do this within the next 10 years or the next 15 years. But let's pick some things we should do right now for our public safety and do them and get them in place. And that will give us the good start as to how we address the other ones, the ones that are too hard to handle.
Thank you. I like to put in a vision question.
Oh boy.
5 years from now, what problem that we're losing sleep over today will we have solved? And the other half of it is, what problem that nobody's paying any attention to will be much bigger and will be something that we should be maybe working now to address,
Right.
so we don't lose sleep on it 5 years from now.
So the problem that I think we can solve, or we can start solving right now, is the affordability of our housing in Gloucester. Because we are blessed with living on the coast, property values continue to rise because a lot of people want to live here. The downside of that is that it's becoming harder for certain strata in our diverse population to afford to buy a house in Gloucester. For instance, there are a lot of families with kids in school-age children who can't afford to buy a house here. We really want them to be a part of our community, but if they have to move away from Gloucester, then we're losing something very important. Similarly, we have a lot of the people who are service providers who work for a living, but who also are starting not to be able to afford to live here. We can do something about that. The city has some tools, not a lot, but we have some tools. We have zoning is the biggest tool that we have, and we can, through creative zoning, as long as we maintain the neighborhood character and take into account what the neighbors view as their vision of Gloucester, we can make some changes to increase the number of housing units that are in that price range for those people that I just suggested. That's something we can do something about. It takes a little leadership. It takes standing up and saying to people, this may seem unpopular because a lot of people don't want to have zoning changes in their neck of the woods, but why it's going to work and how it's going to work, and we can visualize it for people so they can see the benefit to our community. But we have to actually do it, and we have to do it now. So that's the thing that I see within 5 years we can do something about. We can increase the housing, the number of units that are affordable for those people I just described.
And the little problem that's way down on the list,
That's way down on the list.
but might be way up at the top of the list in
Yeah.
5 years if we don't do something.
Well, you know, a community is dynamic and it's changing all the time. We have to pay so careful attention on our public schools. And our public schools have a great foundation, but they have room for improvement. We can do that, but it takes a lot of attention and a lot of energy right now to do that, or we will lose some of the benefit of that wonderful institution that we have. And those are things, again, we need to decide what they are and keep them front of mind and do something about it before the time comes when we are suffering from that.
Good. So now it's time for your 1 minute closing statement. That was fast.
Well, that was fast. So the one thing, you know, we've talked a lot about issues today, and specifics. The one thing that I would like to leave with anybody who's watching this is the most important part of city government. Municipal government is perhaps one of the beacons of hope we have in all of our government structure here in the United States today, because it's where people can be heard and we can do something about the concerns that people have, and we can do it quickly. And different levels of government don't have that. And then there's a lot of acrimony that has appeared in some of the upper reaches of government. We thankfully don't have that here. The key, though, is listening. Listening, learning, and then leading. And those have been the words of my campaign, and I am a really, really good listener. And that's something I've learned from my professional career as a labor negotiator. I know how to listen, and I know how to respond to people so that they understand that they've been listened to. So that is my message to the voters. That's what you'll get if you elect Paul Lundberg as mayor of Gloucester.
On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Cape Ann, I want to thank Paul Lundberg for agreeing to be interviewed, and thank 1623 Studios and the Gloucester Daily Times for making the interview accessible to the public. Please remember to vote
Yes.
on Tuesday, November 4th.